Dolan's Cadillac. I waited and watched for 7 years. I saw him come and go, Dolan. I watched him walk into fancy restaurants, dressed in a tuxedo, always with a different woman, always with his pair of bodyguards. I watched his hair turn from gray to silver. I watched him leave Las Vegas, I watched him return. Always in the same gray Cadillac. He did not know I was watching him, I never came close enough for him to know that. I was careful. But I dreamed of revenge. He killed my wife. Do you want details? Her name was Elizabeth. She taught in the same school where I taught and where I still teach. She taught first graders. They loved her. I loved her, too, and still love her. She was not beautiful, but she was pretty. She was quiet, but she could laugh. I often dream of her. There has never been another woman for me. Nor ever will be. He made a mistake, Dolan. And Elizabeth was there, at the wrong place and the wrong time, to see it. She went to the police, and the police sent her to the FBI, and she was questioned, and she agreed to testify. They promised to protect her, but they underestimated Dolan. She got into her car one night, and it exploded. With no witness, he was let free. He made me a widower, Dolan. He went back to his world, I went to mine. I am a school teacher. School teachers and people like Dolan don't have the same lifestyle. The penthouse apartment in Vegas for him, the empty home for me. The beautiful women in furs and evening dresses for him, the silence for me. But I watched. I was careful. Very careful. I knew what he was, what he could do. During my summer vacation 3 years ago, I even followed him from Las Vegas to Los Angeles, where he went quite often. He stayed in his fine house and had parties, and I stayed in a cheap hotel. I was losing hope. He was well guarded, so well guarded. He went nowhere without his 2 armed guerrillas, and the Cadillac was fully armored, too. Then I followed him back to Las Vegas, always keeping a distance, and when we passed an orange sign which said detour 5 miles, I saw how it could be done. I suddenly remembered some movie I had seen years before. In this film, a band of robbers had tricked an armored car into the desert by setting fake detour signs. When the driver turned onto a deserted dirt road, the robbers removed the signs. They surrounded the car and killed the guards. I remembered that very well. My idea of creating a fake detour was romantic and unrealistic. It would be impossible for only one man to do such a thing. And I was only one man. So, it wouldn't work. It was just a momentary dream, like the others I'd had over the years. Best to forget it. But I couldn't. Elizabeth's voice inside my head was whispering, "Detour him and kill him. Kill them all." But it wouldn't work. I knew that men like Dolan have a sixth sense, so they can smell danger. He would see the detour trick in a minute. I could get real detour signs from some road department and set them up in all the right places. I could even put orange road cones. I could do all that, and Dolan would still smell danger. "Then don't try to fool him with a fake detour," Elizabeth's voice whispered. "Fool him with a real one." That's when I began to laugh. The other teachers laughed at me when I joined the gym. I laughed along with them. And why shouldn't I laugh? My wife had been dead for 7 years, hadn't she? So why shouldn't I laugh? My muscles ached all that autumn and winter, and I was constantly hungry. I bought myself a sports machine for Christmas. I was too busy working out, losing weight, building my muscles. In February I began to run every day. That's why I saw Dolan less often. When summer came, I applied for a job with the Nevada Highway Department. I was hired and went to see my district foreman named Harvey Blocker. He just looked at me and laughed, "Are you kidding? What are you in real life, man?" "An accountant? A teacher," I said. "Elementary school." "Oh, Jesus," he said, and laughed again. "Get out of here, okay?" I had a pocket watch I'd got from my great-grandfather. I took the watch out and showed it to Blocker. "See this?" I spoke. "It's worth $600, maybe $700. Is this a bribe?" Blocker laughed. "Man, I've heard of people who made deals with the devil, but you're the first one I've ever met who wanted to bribe himself into hell. You don't understand what you're getting yourself into. In July it is so hot here that even strong men cry. And you aren't strong, man." I said, "Okay, then. Let's do this. The day you decide that I can't do it, I'll quit. Deal? You're crazy." I thought of Dolan and of Elizabeth and said nothing. "You start tomorrow," Blocker said. "Like I said, you don't understand what you're getting yourself into. But you will." And he was right. I remember almost nothing about the first few weeks. It was hell indeed. The heat was terrible and the work was exhausting, but I learned a lot about road construction. I was shaking all the time, and it was hard for me not to faint. At such moments Elizabeth spoke inside my mind, "Dolan is your business. Remember Dolan." I thought of Dolan and somehow managed to go on working. All that time Harvey Blocker was looking at me with compassion. "Why are you doing this?" he sometimes asked. "I've got my reasons." That's what I told him. I spent that season in hell because I had to get in shape. Preparing to dig a grave for a man may not need such measures, but it was not just a man I wanted to bury. It was that damned Cadillac. I spent the whole summer shoveling and driving a loader, and when I went back to school that September the other teachers looked at me and stopped laughing. I subscribed to the State Highway Bulletin, Nevada road signs, which I received and looked through every month. What I was interested in was always on the last page of the bulletin. This section, titled The Calendar, listed the dates and sites of road work in each month. I was especially interested in sites marked REPAV or repaving, because these operations often meant detours. Sooner or later, I thought, those 4 letters would spell the end for Dolan. Just 4 letters, but sometimes I saw them in my dreams. 4 things needed to coincide: a trip for Dolan, a vacation time for me, a national holiday, and a 3-day weekend. It wouldn't be easy, and it wouldn't be soon. I knew I might have to wait for years. Yes, years, maybe. Or maybe never. But I felt that it would happen, and that I would be prepared. And finally, it happened. Not that summer, not that autumn, and not the following spring. But in June of last year, I opened Nevada road signs and saw it in the calendar. The 4th of July, Independence Day, fell on a Monday, so here were 3 of the 4 coincidences I needed. But what about Dolan? What about the 4th thing? I remembered how 3 times before he went to Los Angeles during the week of the 4th of July. If only he went now, too. How could I find it out? I thought about this for a long time, but couldn't find the answer. Then, on the last day of school, I suddenly realized how I might be able to do it. I began to smile. I was smiling at Elizabeth. Sheets, I thought. Sheets and towels and silverware, the rugs, the grounds. Everything has to look perfect. He'll want everything to be perfect. Of course. Having perfect things was a part of Dolan, just like his Cadillac. School finished on June 10th that year. 12 days later I flew to Los Angeles, where I got a room at a hotel and rented a car. On each of the next 6 days I drove to the Hollywood Hills and secretly watched Dolan's house. At first there was nothing. The house looked empty. Yet I stayed, wishing and hoping for the 4th coincidence. Then, on the 29th of June, when I had almost lost hope, A car marked Los Angeles Security Services drove through the gate of Dolan's house. I kept watching with a new hope. About 15 minutes later, a blue van marked Big Joe's Cleaning Service stopped in front of Dolan's house. 4 cleaning women got out of the van, and the security guard unlocked the gate. The women brought in sheets and towels and 2 vacuum cleaners. They were opening the house. He was coming. Dolan didn't change his Cadillac every year, or even every 2 years. The gray one he was riding that June was 3 years old. I knew its dimensions exactly. I had then taken 3 figures, the Cadillac's width, height, and length, to a friend who teaches mathematics at high school. I said I was writing a science fiction story about aliens, and I wanted him to check my calculations. My friend wanted to know how fast this alien vehicle would be going. "It's important to know," he said. "If you want the alien vehicle in your story to fall right into your trap, the trap has to be exactly the right size. The shape was important, too," he said. To make the right trap, I needed to widen the entrance. Then there was this problem of speed. If Dolan's Cadillac was going too fast, and the hole was too short, it would fly over it without falling in the hole at all. On the other hand, if the Cadillac was going too slowly, and the hole was too long, it might land at the bottom on its nose and stick out of the hole. I calculated the speed very quickly. On the open highway, Dolan's driver went between 60 and 65 miles per hour. He would probably be driving a little slower when he saw the signs of construction. Soon I had all the measures ready. After I had seen the women going into the house with the sheets and towels, I flew back to Las Vegas. I unlocked my house, went into the living room, and picked up the telephone. My hand was shaking a little because now I would have to take a risk. I had made a plan which I thought would work. I would make it work. I found the number of Big Joe's Cleaning Service and dialed it. A man answered. "This is Bill from Ron's Catering," I said. "We've got a party on Saturday night at Mr. Dolan's residence in Hollywood Hills. I wanted to know if one of your girls could check if they still have that big punch bowl in the cabinet over the stove because our bowl will be in use that day at a wedding reception. Could you do that for me?" I was asked to wait. With each second, I became more and more sure that the man had found my call suspicious and was now checking the information on another line. At last, he returned. "Saturday night? Are you sure, mister? Because my paper says that Mr. Dolan is expected after 3 p.m. on Sunday afternoon," he said with concern. "Let me have a look again," I said. I picked up a textbook and leafed through it close to the phone. "Oh, it's my mistake. I'm really sorry. The party is on Sunday night. Then there's no need for that bowl because our big punch bowl will be back from the wedding reception in the morning. Okay then. Bye. Comfortable. Unsuspicious. The voice of a man who wasn't going to check it. I hoped. I began thinking and planning. To get to Los Angeles by 3, Dolan would leave Las Vegas at about 10 o'clock on Sunday morning. So, he would be near the detour site between 11:15 and 11:30, when there wasn't much traffic anyway. I decided it was time to stop dreaming and start acting. First of all, I bought an old van and a compressor. Late on Friday afternoon I loaded the van with shovels, a big industrial stapler, canvas, wooden planks, the compressor, a toolbox, binoculars, a borrowed highway department pneumatic drill for cutting through asphalt, etc. Then I stopped at a shopping center, stole a pair of license plates, put them on my van, and drove to the detour site. 76 miles west of Las Vegas, I saw the sign I had been waiting for since Elizabeth died, detour ahead 6 miles. I stopped the van and examined the situation. It was almost perfect. The detour was a right turn between two hills. The main road was now blocked by a line of road cones and an orange sign, reading "Road closed, use detour." Yet the reason for the detour was not visible from there, and that was good. I didn't want Dolan to see the trap before he fell into it. In the evening the road was almost empty. Quickly, I got out of the van, moved the road cones, drove through the gap, and then put them back into places. Now I was there, safe behind the detour. It was time to get to work. I drove along the closed road, chose a flat spot, stopped and unloaded the van. Then I rested, looking up at the cold desert stars. "Here we go, Elizabeth," I whispered. I marked the dimensions of the grave, using white chalk and the calculations of my friend. I drew lines across this shape, making a grid of 42 squares. When I was done, I looked at the funnel shape and smiled in the dark. Then I started the compressor and went to square one. The compressor and the pneumatic drill made a lot of noise, but there was no one around, only some abandoned road equipment and machinery. I hoped to finish this part before midnight. The first thing was to cut out the asphalt squares. The work went faster than I had hoped, but not fast enough. It was not done by midnight and not by 3 in the morning. I decided to stop. No more, not tonight, I thought. Under the gloves my hands were covered with blisters. My head, my back, my whole body ached. Even my teeth ached. I had cut out only 28 squares. 28. 14 to go. And that was only the beginning. Never, I thought. It's impossible. Can't be done. Yes, my darling. Yes, Elizabeth's voice whispered inside my head. Tomorrow was Saturday. No, today. Today was Saturday. Dolan was coming on Sunday. No time. Yes, my darling. I'll try, I thought, and then I lay down on the ground and fell into a sleep that was like death. I woke up with the sun shining in my face. I sat up and almost screamed because all my muscles hurt. Had I thought I was in shape? Had I really? How could I cut out 14 more squares of asphalt? I couldn't even walk. I can't do it. Please, darling. I took 4 painkiller pills and had a light snack. Then I walked over to the pneumatic drill and started it again. I finished cutting out the last block of asphalt by 11 o'clock. It was time to use one of the abandoned loaders. I climbed into the cabin and looked for the key. There was no key there, of course. I remembered something I had learned that summer when I worked for the Nevada Highway Department, where losing one's loader key was an ordinary thing. I pulled and touched the ignition wires together to start the loader. It worked. The rest of the day I spent removing the asphalt blocks. When all the asphalt pieces were in the ditch, it was almost 2 o'clock. Then I slept again, and when I woke up in the dark, there was a new moon rising in the purple sky. In its light, the cut I had made really looked like a grave. Never, I told the long hole in the asphalt. Please, Elizabeth whispered back. Please. For me. I took 4 more painkiller pills. For you, I said. After a while I got into the loader again and started to dig, dumping the earth down in the ditch, covering the pieces of asphalt that were already there. Slowly the hole, Dolan's grave, got deeper and deeper. At dawn I realized that I was actually getting near the end. I worked on the loader until 9 o'clock and then I quit. There were other things to do, and I was running out of time. My funnel hole was 40 feet long. It would be enough. I drove the loader back to its place. I would need it later. I took a short rest, lying on my back in the van, imagining Dolan. What if he flies this time? I thought. He had never flown to Los Angeles before, always it had been the Cadillac. But what if? It was 9:30 when I took out the canvas, the big industrial stapler, and the wooden planks, and began fixing them over to the hole. The work was now easy, compared to drilling and digging, but still the pain in my back was unbearable. It was beginning to look as if the trap was going to be ready, and that was the most important thing. When I had placed all the planks, I covered them with dark gray canvas, creating 42 fake feet of Route 71. The illusion was not perfect, of course, but from a distance it looked exactly like the actual surface of the road. It looked better than I had hoped. On Sunday morning there was hardly any traffic at all. That was fine with me. First, I drove the van to the beginning of the detour and collected all the road cones. With that done, I drove back and parked the van out of sight. I had taken away the cones, and now all that was left was the big orange sign, "Road Closed, Use Detour." It was time for some other cars to appear, but not time for Dolan yet, surely. Soon there was a car coming. I hoped that it wasn't Dolan because I would just go mad if all had been for nothing. But it was just a Chevrolet. What if he flew? There was no more time for nerves now. I got my binoculars and walked to the top of the hill as fast as I could. At the top, I lay on the ground and began watching. I could see the road stretch for about 3 miles. There were 6 vehicles driving on the road. But no sign of Dolan. I looked at my watch. 11:25 a.m. He would be here very soon. This was prime time. But at 11:40 there was still no sign of him. He's not coming. He went by the interstate. Or he flew. Number. He'll come. He won't. There was another car coming in the distance. This car was big. Big enough to be a Cadillac. The car disappeared behind a curve and then came out again. It was a Cadillac, but it wasn't gray. It was green. I was in agony. What if Dolan had exchanged his old Cadillac for a new one? But he had never owned a green one before. But there's always the first time. On the other hand, Cadillacs were so common on the road between Los Angeles and Las Vegas. If I waited any longer to see the passengers, it would be too late. It's almost too late now. Go down and take away the detour sign. You're going to miss him. But what if it's 2 rich old people going to Los Angeles to see their children and their grandchildren? Do it. It's him. It's the only chance you're going to have. That's right. The only chance. So, I can't catch the wrong people. It's stolen. It's not. I could hear the motor now, Dolan. The old people. Elizabeth, help me, I whispered. Darling, that man has never had a green Cadillac in his life. He never would. Of course, it's not him. Exhausted, I waited to see the driver. It wasn't the old people, but it wasn't Dolan, either. I relaxed a little as the green Cadillac went on to the detour. Slowly, I turned to watch the road again. And saw him coming. There was no mistake that it was Dolan's Cadillac, it was gray. It was him, Dolan. It was Dolan, and I didn't have to see that gray Cadillac to know it. I didn't know if he could smell me, but I could smell him. I ran down the hill back to the big detour sign, pulled it out, and threw it far into the ditch. Then I ran to the abandoned machinery and hid behind it, listening for the engine. But the sound didn't come and didn't come and didn't come. They turned. He got suspicious. Was that an engine? No, just the wind. Not coming. Turned back. No, it was not just the wind. It was a motor, and a few seconds later a vehicle went past my hiding place. I got up to have a better view. The gray Cadillac went down the hill toward the flat stretch of the road, going 50 or maybe a little more. It never braked. Not even at the end. They never saw it, never had the slightest idea. What happened was this. There was the illusion that Dolan's Cadillac went through Route 71 and disappeared. I could hear how the canvas-covered planks broke under the car, and then there was a big thud and the sound of breaking glass and metal. A large cloud of dust rose in the air. All of it happened in only 3 seconds. But they are the 3 seconds I will remember my whole life. I wanted to go down there right away, but first I had to put the detour sign back. I didn't want anyone to interrupt us. I ran back and put the detour sign in its place before another car would appear. Then I ran to my van, drove it back to the sign and returned the road cones to their places, too. Then I paused and listened. I could hear the wind. And from the hole in the road, I could hear the sound of someone shouting. Or maybe screaming. Then the shouting stopped. But the screaming got much louder. I wasn't worried that they were going to get out and attack me or run away into the desert, because they couldn't get out. The trap had worked perfectly. I drove the van down to the trap and got out. The Cadillac was now sitting on its wheels at the far end of the hole. The 3 men inside couldn't open their doors because there wasn't enough space. They couldn't open their windows because their mechanism had been broken. The front end was totally destroyed. The driver and the man in front had been squashed in the crash, but this did not matter to me. I knew that someone was still alive in there, Dolan. I had been worried about the windshield. There was always a chance that it could have broken, allowing Dolan to get out. But his car was fully armored, made for dictators and military leaders. The glass hadn't broken. The back window was even tougher because it was smaller. Dolan couldn't break it, not in the time I was going to give him, certainly, and he wouldn't try to shoot in it, because the bullet would ricochet back into the car. I threw some dirt onto the Cadillac's roof. The response was immediate. "We need some help, please. We're stuck in here." Dolan's voice. He sounded calm. But I sensed his fear anyway, and I almost felt sorry for him then. I could imagine him sitting in the back seat of his Cadillac, his 2 men injured and unconscious, probably even dead. Then I stopped trying to imagine it because it was Dolan who had killed my wife. I threw some more dirt. "Who's there?" "Me," I said, "but I'm not the help you're waiting for, Dolan." Dolan was quiet for a moment. The man outside, the man on top, knew his name. Which meant that this was an extremely dangerous situation for him. "Who are you?" he finally asked coldly. "I'm nobody," I said. "Just a nobody who had a good reason to put you where you are right now." And suddenly Dolan said, "Is your name Robinson?" I was shocked. He had made the right connection so fast. But I said, "My name doesn't matter." "You know what happens now, don't you?" "I can't hear you, man," Dolan said to me. "Come a little closer." I leaned over the hole, but then drew back, and just in time. He fired the revolver 4 times. 4 black holes appeared in the roof of Dolan's Cadillac, and one of the bullets flew past my head. "Did I get you?" Dolan shouted. "No," I said. "Then I want to make you a proposal," Dolan said. I said nothing. "My friend?" Silence. He fired the revolver 2 more times. "Hey! You!" His voice trembled. "Are you still up there?" "I'm here," I said. "I was just thinking that you've fired 6 times. You know, you might want to save 1 bullet for yourself." He was silent for a few moments, thinking. "What are you planning?" "I think you already know," I said. "I have spent the last 36 hours digging your grave, and now I'm going to bury you in your Cadillac. You want to hear about my proposal first? I'll listen." In a few seconds. "First, I have to get something." I walked back to the van and got my shovel. "I'm here," I said when I got back. "You talk." "I'll listen." When he spoke, he sounded more cheerful. "I'm offering you $1 million to let me out of here. $1 million and my personal guarantee that no one will ever touch you. Not me, not my men, not anyone else." I dug into the ground and threw more dirt on the top of the Cadillac. "What are you doing?" Dolan cried with alarm. I thought I'd keep myself busy while listening, I said. Keep talking. Now Dolan spoke faster. My muscles didn't hurt anymore. It was amazing. I shoveled steadily, and soon the Cadillac's back part was deep in dirt. Look, this is crazy, Dolan said, and now I could hear panic in his voice. I mean, it's just crazy. You got that right, I said, and threw in more dirt. He held longer than I thought any man could, talking, reasoning, promising. At one point the passenger door opened a little, and I saw a hand with a big ruby ring on the finger. I threw some dirt into the opening. He screamed and shut the door again. He broke not long after. It was the sound of the dirt falling down that finally got to him, I think. The sound must have been very loud inside the Cadillac. The dirt and stones hitting the roof and falling past the window. He must have finally realized that he was sitting in a coffin. Get me out! He shouted. Please. I can't stand it. Get me out. You want me to get you out? I asked. Yes. Yes. Jesus. Yes. 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 Then scream. That's what I want. Scream for me. If you scream loudly enough, I'll get you out. He screamed. That was good. I spoke. But not good enough. I began to dig again, throwing dirt over the roof of the Cadillac. He screamed again, even louder. Not bad, I said, working even harder. I was smiling in spite of my aching back. 5 million. It was the last reasonable thing he said. I don't think so, I replied. So he screamed, and I threw dirt down on the Cadillac. The dirt covered the roof of the car almost from side to side now. For some time, he screamed very loudly, but by the time I finally rested, he was producing only grunts. My hands were bleeding. I looked at my watch. It was just past 1 o'clock. The wind in the desert was rising. I leaned over the hole. Dolan? No answer. Scream, Dolan. No answer at first, then some grunts. I went back to the van, turned on the radio, and listened to the weather forecast. They promised high winds and visibility problems because of the flying sand. Perfect. Then I went to the loader and started it. It was time to use it again. I drove the loader to the hole and was relieved to see that Dolan hadn't broken any glass or got out. Dolan, I said, cheerfully. There was no answer. Dolan. No answer. He's killed himself, I thought, and felt disappointment. Killed himself somehow or died of fright. Dolan? Then there was laughter, coming from the hole. It was the laughter of a madman. He laughed and laughed. Then he screamed, then he laughed again. Finally, he did both things together. For a while I laughed and screamed with him, too, and the wind laughed and screamed at both of us. Then I got into the loader and began to cover him for real. In 4 minutes even the shape of the Cadillac was gone. There was just a hole filled with dirt. I thought I could hear something, but with the sound of the wind and the loader's engine, it was hard to tell. It sounded like far down underneath all that dirt Dolan was still laughing. There might have been some words, too. It was hard to tell. I smiled and nodded. "Scream," I whispered. "Scream, if you want." When the job was done, I returned the loader to its original place and rubbed all of the metal in the cabin with my shirt to remove any fingerprints. The wind was stronger than ever, and the sandstorm was rising. I needed rest, so I went back to the van and took out my sleeping bag. I was asleep 5 seconds after I got myself into it. When I woke up from a nightmare I could not remember, I heard the wind and the sand hitting the van. The outside visibility was down to almost zero, but I found my keys and started the engine. The radio weather report said that all the roads had been closed. But I had to go back the way I had come. I still had to put the 42 blocks of asphalt back. Stay in. You're crazy if you go out there. But I had to finish it. I worked slowly because the wind blew the sand into my eyes. I lifted, carried, and placed, lifted, carried, and placed. Now I was thinking about Dolan again. Was he dead yet? If no, then how soon would he be dead? Would the Cadillac collapse under the weight of the dirt and asphalt? "Dolan," I said, getting down on my knees, "I've changed my mind and decided to let you out." Nothing. No sound at all. Dead for sure this time. I went back and got another square of asphalt. I placed it, and as I started to rise, I heard faint laughter coming up through the earth. When it stopped, I went back and got another asphalt square. "For the love of God!" Dolan shrieked. "For the love of God, Robinson." "Yes," I said, smiling. "For the love of God." I put the block of asphalt down. Although I listened, I didn't hear him anymore. They never found him, Dolan. It was the storm. That lucky storm, I'm sure. The storm almost buried the section of Route 71 which had been closed for repaving. When the road workers went back to work, They didn't remove the new sand dunes and never noticed a short section of broken asphalt. They added gravel and resurfaced it with fresh asphalt. Sooner or later the Cadillac will collapse, of course, if it hasn't, and the highway department will plan another. But no one will ever know that down in the darkness there is a gray Cadillac buried with 3 dead men in it, one of them with a ruby ring on his finger.